Now let's understand the key tools and techniques and let's say inputs and outputs or the ITTOs for the scope control. When we talked about scope control, when we talked saying that it's essential for ensuring that all of the work performed or the work performed um, is aligned with the approved scope baseline. By using a specialized tool, the project managers can track the scope performance, predict any variances early, and prevent unauthorized changes that could impact the project success. The key ITTOs here we have when controlling the scope, including the project management plan, and the project management plan here, when we talked about the WBS, WBS dictionary, the scope statement and the planning phase, project document in case if there is any requirements traceability, or also the work performance data, which is let's say the current state of these deliverables without doing any analysis on top of that. So this is the work performance data and the OPAs. The tools and techniques he is mainly used to is to analyze the data and then control or measure or compare the actual scope baseline with the executed the deliverables. The outputs here would be the work performance information, which is the processed version and the analyzed version of the work performance data, change request if needed to realign or to re-baseline the project. Also, you have the project management plan updates if necessary, in case if there's any change request, and you have to update all of these project management plans, the project document updates as well. And to start first with understanding the data analysis techniques for scope control. First, let's see this variance analysis. Variance analysis is, or let's understand first what exactly is data analysis when doing scope control. Data analysis, it helps you as a project manager in evaluating the work completed versus the planned work. And these techniques, including the variance analysis, it's again, it's comparing the actual versus the planned scope. You also have this root cause analysis. And root cause analysis, we've talked many times about it. When we say that it helps you identifying the reasons, let's say for scope deviation or scope creep, so you can avoid, you understand the root cause of that issue, and then you start applying a corrective action to avoid falling again back into such, let's say, issues when doing scope control. The trend analysis, it's like a forecasting the potential scope issues based on the historical data. So data analysis as a key technique here, it allows the project managers to quantify the scope performance, and by regularly reviewing the data, the teams can detect issues early and make informed decisions to keep the project on track. Think of an IT project here. A variance analysis reveals that only 70% of the planned features are developed at halfway of the project. And that will promote the team to reassess the priority and reallocate the resources, helping them to finish the 100% of the planned features. Now let's look into, let's say, the trend analysis as one of these key, let's say, techniques that can be used. So trend analysis is an essential tool in scope control, and it helps the project managers to anticipate the potential problems before they escalate. By tracking the past performance, you as a project manager can predict if the project is likely to experience a further deviations. It, think of using the historical data to identify the patterns and to predict the future deviation. It helps in early detection of scope creep, and it ensures the proactive decision making to prevent any further deviations. Now let's look to the variance, let's say analysis or variance monitoring on doing scope control. The variance monitoring is crucial for identifying, let's say, unexpected changes in the project scope. By analyzing these variances, the project managers can determine their root cause and assess their impact and decide an appropriate corrective action. So again, the variance monitoring helps you measuring the gap between the plan versus actual work. And it helps you as a project manager in, let's say, identifying the deviation from the scope baseline when we talked about the project scope statement, WPS. So this is our scope baseline. And it helps you ensuring that you take a corrective action, before any variances escalate in the future. One of these also tools that you can use is an inspection. So scope validation involves formal acceptance of the completed the deliverables, if you recall. And when we talked about inspection as one of these key processes when doing the scope validation and scope control, we say that it ensures that meets the predefined acceptance criteria for the scope validation. And we talked about the techniques, including the walkthroughs, the audits, testing. The walkthrough is like reviewing the completed work against the scope. Audits, think of formal checks for compliance in terms of maybe you have regulatory requirements or regulatory compliance requirement that you have to conduct an audit to ensure that your project is aligned with these requirements. Testing here is to ensure the functionality and the quality. Inspection methods play a crucial role in verifying that the project deliverables meet the approved scope. These methods involves reviewing the completed work, checking against the project requirements, and ensuring that the stakeholders formally accept the deliverables. Think of a software development project where a formal user acceptance testing or UAT phase is conducted, where the stakeholders verify that all of the software meets all of the functional and performance requirements before the final approval. We talked many times about the AVM, which we are again gonna cover all of this in more in depth. But here, just to recall ourselves on what were the AVM. But now let's see how it's important for the scope control process. EVM or earned value management integrates the scope, the cost, and schedule performance metrics. The key indicators that can be, let's say, tracked when let's say controlling the scope is key indicators can include the planned value or the PV, which means what should be completed, and the earned value, which is what actually has been completed, and the let's say the schedule and cost variances, including the SV and CV to measure the deviation in terms of schedule and cost deviation. Again, we talked about AVM and we talked that it's let's say it's a powerful tool that allows the project managers to quantify the project performance in terms of the scope completion, cost efficiency, and schedule adherence. And by comparing all of these planned and actual values, teams can quickly identify issues, take corrective actions. Now let's look how to control scope creep using the scope change management. Scope creep, as we talked many times, is one of the most common challenges in project management. By implementing a strict change control procedures and leveraging formal approval processes, the project managers can ensure that all of the work aligns with the original project scope, stakeholder expectation. Scope creep it occurs when there is a work that or uncontrolled changes or your work expand beyond the approved project scope without any proper control or documentation. And implementing a strict change control process ensures that only approved changes are executed based on the assessed impact in terms of alignment, in terms of goals, in terms of impact on the overall project constraints. Using the scope management tools like change control board, formal approvals help you maintaining the control over the scope and avoiding falling into, let's say, the scope creep issues. Here are the key, let's say, software tools that you as a project manager can use in today's world. Where you have the Microsoft project, you can use, you know, Gantt charts for scope tracking, for example. You have Jira or Trello to manage agile scope changes, where you have the product backlog. You can see the risks. You can see the all of these softwares. By the way, it enhances the real-time tracking and reporting. These are the popular tools that nowadays is mainly used, such also the Primavera to for large-scale control projects. So these all of these modern project management tools provide a real-time insight into the scope performance. Also, it can automate the tracking, the reporting, and also it facilitates the collaboration among the stakeholders by leveraging these softwares. Yeah, you as a project manager can quickly detect and resolve any scope-related issues. Let's look into one of these case studies to see scope control in construction project in real world. So let's say where is a scenario where is a high-rise building project faced repeated scope changes due the client requests. The project manager implement a variance analysis and inspection to understand the impact on the uh, scope. And by using a trend analysis, project manager and the team predicted a future deviation based on the number of requests and the trend of the number of the client requests, which required them to adjust the plans accordingly. By conducting a trend analysis and predicting the future deviation and having, let's say, more understand and more control over these client requests, the team has prevented the cost overruns by enforcing a strict change control process, also reduced the delays through our proactive variance monitoring and adjusting the baseline to accommodate all of these requested changes. Also, it improved the client satisfaction by ensuring only essential scope changes were approved. To summarize our session on, let's say, the tools and techniques that is used when doing scope control, we talked about using the right tools for scope control ensures that the project work remains aligned with the objectives. Also, deviations are quickly identified and corrective actions are taken. These techniques, including the data analysis, trend analysis, variance monitoring, help you as a project manager to maintain the project efficiency, prevent unnecessary changes, and improve the overall project success.